how does modern life become more comfortable, but somehow still become less meaningful? I would have thought that that comfort kind of helps fulfill a lot of that meaning.
People used to even borrow money, borrow tools, borrow household things from each other. They would go to each other's house every day before because they needed each other for company, for all those things.
A lot of the time in my generation, it is very easy to avoid these struggles and these discomforts because of the fact that we have a screen that can distract us, or we have entertainment that can quickly take us away from that struggle and boredom.
Going through the practicality of life, what I have learned is, Shayan, that difficulty is the biggest teacher. It is the biggest tool to build resilience, kind of come back up again through difficult or in any situation.
When I think about my younger sisters, obviously as well, they've grown up not just with those screens in front of them, but in this topic of neighborhoods, they've grown up with a lot of privacy, but a lack of community as well.
I feel that going through the struggles of life definitely helps, and seeing struggles as teachers is the best way to approach difficulty.
We can order everything online, whether it be food, whether it be clothes or anything else, and we never really have to speak to our neighbor. There's no need to have a community as much anymore. We pass through beautiful neighborhoods, past manicured gardens and quiet streets. On the surface, everything looks peaceful, but inside our minds, something can sometimes feel a bit unsettled. Today, my dad and I are going to ask, have we built a life that looks good on the outside, but feels empty on the inside? Welcome to the Gen X Gen Z podcast. I'm your host, Shayan, and with me, as always, my father, author and e-commerce entrepreneur. We've been having a lot of these conversations over the years, just the two of us, and we decided that it was about time we opened them up. So Baba, growing up, I'm sure this isn't something that's just been a perception of my generation, but it seems like something that's kind of been drilled in our minds from a very young age, that grow up, do well at school, gain an education, gain your qualification, get a good job, and then eventually settle down in a nice neighborhood with a nice family. It's something that's kind of been pictured and plastered all over TV, through teachers, in every kind of sense of the form. But it makes me wonder that people often do move to very nice neighborhoods. They build really big houses and everything from the outside seems quite settled and set. Yet there is still that feeling of unsettlement on the inside. So it makes me wonder, why do people still not feel that happiness once they've moved to a nice neighborhood?
Well, the normal chores of life where there's distraction, there's noise, there is traffic around you or other friction of life. When you avoid that and come to a quieter, leafy, comfortable neighborhood where neighbors are politer, sophisticated, so of course it's an upgrade. So the body and mind needs do get fulfilled. So body feels calmer, you sleep better, you kind of feel upgraded with it. But our inner needs are a bit different. So they fulfill your body needs and mind needs, but your inner needs comes and get fulfilled with more kind of meaningful side of life. So when you're spending your time more meaningfully, that brings that peace of mind, contentment, and happiness. What happens is that when you are struggling, you are at an earlier part of life, you're doing your degree or started a job, those struggles, financial struggles or struggles with your local neighborhood or your success you want it to be is not yet achieved, your focus and your blame of not getting that fulfillment stays on not having all that bigger car, bigger house, nice neighborhood or financial independence. What happens is that when you move up the ladder financially, you become more financially independent, you buy bigger cars and big house, you settled in now, so you feel, okay, I achieved what I wanted to achieve. So you feel content from your financial goals point of view. But now you have nothing else to blame for your inner contentment. So that becomes sharper. The spotlight on it, it's not that it has increased now, it stays the same and might even have decreased to some degree that you feel fulfilled, at least from financial point of view. But because there's no other excuse left from that emptiness you always felt before, it's not that it just have come in when you moved to a bigger house. It was already there, but it was kind of given an excuse because these financial problems, once they will get fulfilled, then I'll feel that peace of mind and fulfillment. But then, okay, now all that is fulfilled. You're living in a comfortable neighborhood. You have enough money to live rest of your life with the same status and standard. But that emptiness is still staying and the focus becomes sharper. That's why people sometimes kind of in a richer place feel a bit more emptier when this hits. Because relationship of peace and fulfillment is not with finances, but how much meaningful and how much purposeful life you're living.
And I understand what you're saying, but regarding that purpose, obviously above everything else, purpose requires a meaning. And a lot of the time, I guess, when you guys speak about your childhood, you kind of talk about that a big part of that meaning was a sense of survivalism. Obviously, you didn't come from nothing, but it was still something that was there. A lot of the states didn't take control of a lot of the comforts that we have now. Those necessities of food, of warmth, even for like comfortable education for children. The state takes care of so much now, healthcare as well. Despite all of that, we still have such high rates of this kind of loneliness and anxiety, even though so much comfort is now provided to us. And my question then, Baba, is how does modern life become more comfortable but somehow still become less meaningful? I would have thought that that comfort kind of helps fulfill a lot of that meaning.
Because, meaning come from your belonging, your connection, your purpose of life. And in our time, what it was is that belonging was built in. You inherit the belonging. Your parents, your neighborhood, your relations, even uncle, aunties living around us were part of the group of people you belonged to. And you were very well connected to them. Your kind of sorrows and your happiness, your everyday life was shared on a regular basis with them. And your even vulnerabilities were open to each other. So of course people would maybe gossip and judge and intervene into or intrude into each other's life, but at the same time that would provide a lot of comfort that you belong to so many people and the connections were stronger. And that provided a lot of meaning in life. Whatever you did, there were people to share about it, and they were waiting for the news of your achievement or your success or discomfort or failures. So that kind of brought that inner comfort in people's life. Whereas the modern life has created this door which you can close at your own choice to avoid anybody else intruding into your life. So of course, this has given you control over your nuclear family, but over time, that control has also controlled belonging with the rest of the society. So the modern comforts have created exclusion, and because now people are affluent, they can afford things. They don't have to kind of borrow tools or take a lift to go to one place or the other from their neighbors, but they have excluded those people from their regular vulnerabilities and all the regular day-to-day life. So that's why I think people feel comfortable, but don't feel that kind of meaning in life.
And that exclusion, I completely agree with you on that point, because I feel so excluded from community at least. We've been living in the same home for about 2 decades now. So a big portion of my life has been living in that home. And something that was a big eye-opener to me was that I think it was a couple years ago, I was at the mosque and one of the kind of community members introduced me to someone who's a close friend of his. It turns out that that man has been living 2 doors down from us. And I had no idea for the past. I used to see him regularly at the mosque or even at community events or anything, but I never kind of knew that he was our neighbor. And it's similarly, in a lot of ways, we've kind of physically closed that door even to the people that are nearby. We can order everything online, whether it be food, whether it be clothes or anything else, and we never really have to speak to our neighbor. There's no need to have a community as much anymore. So it makes me wonder then, this kind of privacy that we have gained, it definitely has provided safety as well, but has it come at the loss of community as a result?
Yes, of course it has. As you can see yourself, that the street, we don't know all of our street. We of course know them. We can say randomly sometime hello, awkward one. But other than our immediate neighbors, we wouldn't kind of be very regularly in contact with those people.
Yeah.
Whereas in the past, your whole neighborhood was kind of your own.
It was, yeah.
And you would feel that belonging with the place, with the whole of community, and their pain and your pain would be shared with each other. Their life and your life would be shared with each other all the time. And so as the happiness, and they used to say that a girl getting married is the kind of sister or daughter for the whole street. And the same goes for the guys. So that has changed with this excluded environment. And especially more kind of upscale you become, more independent you become. And even now, to be honest with you, with modern life, people, and especially with a lot of urbanization and people moved from different backgrounds into different urban areas. So it is kind of an all kind of neighborhoods that has seeped in. But of course, with more upscale neighborhoods, it is more prevalent and more noticeable.
But this change, Baba, obviously this noticeable change, the reason it's so noticeable is because when you look in contrast to the previous generation, i.e. your generation, and even more so the generation prior to you guys, that change is so visible because you guys, like you mentioned, were so close to your neighbors. Like even you saying right now that, say someone's getting married, it's like the sister or daughter of the community is getting married. That is not something I could imagine at all in today's age. I could never imagine that if, the people opposite our neighborhood got married and we didn't know about it until afterwards. And it makes me wonder, what would you say, having lived through this major change and witnessing it yourself, why do you think that people today often know their neighbors a lot less than the previous generation did? What kind of catalyzed that change?
Well, it is, Shayan, as I mentioned earlier, people used to even borrow money, borrow tools, borrow household things from each other. They would go to each other's house every day before because they needed each other for company, for all those things. With technology, with affluence, with money, people, rather than borrowing tools from the next door neighbor, they would just buy it themselves. People kind of needing advice, so they would Google it rather than going next door and finding out where. Even people would find out from, okay, I need to go to that place, would be the best route and all that. Of course, now Google Maps would do it. So many things, people were dependent on each other, and that dependence, two things, technology and affluence, the financial independence, has taken that away. And we are quite selfish creatures. So when we need people as before we needed, I think I have mentioned in a few podcasts before that people used to live in villages and they needed each other for even harvesting their crop and taking somebody to the hospital and all that kind of thing. And that need kept them together all the time. And slowly, even when they moved to cities, they kind of moved to the same city and they would keep those traditions alive. And over time, through urbanization, different people moved next door to different people who didn't kind of share any big background to each other. And that familiarity started to kind of slowly diminish. And the only thing which could have kept them still connected, the need of each other, say, borrowing tools or finding out or taking advices and all that. So once that is gone, so there's no kind of need for people to stay in contact. Still, we have, for example, our local street WhatsApp group. If there's any intruder or anything, so somebody would just message there, okay, that's the problem. Or if they need advice, they'll just WhatsApp and somebody will give them advice if there is any. But that's how things have become.
So it's still within kind of a social necessity now, basically, of we only interact if needed.
Yes.
But we've spoken about this throughout other podcasts as well, and because other topics have heavily linked to this increase of anxiety, social anxiety that's kind of been birthed from this loneliness epidemic we're going through. So do you not feel like there'll be a point now where the newer generation should be reaching out to their neighbors and neighborhoods to fulfill that social requirement?
Well, of course, you can start off. One can, of course. I remember in my life, I was very proactive from very young age. And I would open up new areas, for example, where my parents are not as kind of connected or my other cousins. So I would kind of make an effort to make contact with people. And I did live a very kind of more proactive social life. But I feel that back then, people needed each other much more, even for company purposes, just to have a kind of, I'll share some news, this happened, that happened, other person wouldn't know. But now everybody through technology has access to things, and sometimes it feels a bit of intrusion to get into somebody's life just like that. As before, people would appreciate you kind of reaching out and trying to give them company or giving them your perspective on life. But of course, people still make an effort, and people who want to stay connected, especially people, say, in certain professions, such as politics, for example, people have to stay in contact with people. And in other areas where social connection is a need. But generally, things are slowing down in terms of kind of social connection than in the past.
Now, But what I want to do is I kind of want to move on to now one of our segments that we call the trade-off segment. So as you know, I'm just going to give you two options. They're not always opposites, just kind of different paths. There's no right answer. I want you to go based off your instinct. And this first one, Dad, it's basically got to do with the impact of comfort on these kind of really rigid characteristics that I feel like your generation have a lot more than ours, such as resilience and gratitude and all those things. So the first one I want to phrase to you, Baba, is would you rather live a comfortable life where you have more time, you have less stress and fewer challenges, but as a result, you possibly will have less growth and urgency? Or would you rather live a life with more difficulty, which might build strength and gratitude, but also be harder to endure as a result?
You know, human natural instinct is go for an easy option and have a comfortable life. People would love to have a lottery win and have plenty of money and then spend it. But going through the practicality of life, what I've learned is, Shan, that difficulty is the biggest teacher. It is the biggest tool to build resilience, kind of come back up again through difficult or in any situation, and even to deal with any situation. Because life, as I mentioned in most of the podcasts, from a king to a servant, have very same or similar pattern. You have a straight road, then you have bump. You have a straight road, then you again have a different bump. Then you straight road and another bump. So life is bumpy. It's always have problems. And we human beings have to learn to deal with those problems. Whatever money you have, whatever other networks you have, if you don't have the resilience to deal with difficulty, you struggle. You feel that anxiety, anxiousness inside you, which kind of makes your life uncomfortable, even if you have a lot of money, So I feel that going through the struggles of life definitely helps, and seeing struggles as teachers is the best way to approach difficulty. And in terms of, for example, gratitude, I feel that people who go through difficulty, bad times, so they take good times with kind of more of, they appreciate more rather than just taking them for granted.
And yeah, I do completely agree with you, Baba, that what you mentioned there at the end, especially that essentially an appreciation of life, that gratitude is there more so when you go through that struggle and resilience, for sure. But in practical terms then, and it kind of leads to my second trade-off, is that would you rather than design your life in a way where you minimize discomfort? Because I feel like that is something that we kind of get taught a lot to, reduce as much discomfort as we can. Or would you deliberately keep some kind of struggle or maybe a space for boredom and waiting in your life because you believe that those things will help build your character?
Well, designing your life to achieve comfort is a wonderful thing to do. So there's no harm in seeking a comfortable home or a comfortable car. But while doing that, people would keep something which will remind them the struggles of life, whether it is kind of through workouts, through sports, which kind of pushes your boundaries, or whether through other experiences, hiking, or whether they are curated experiences, but they are to make you feel challenged. Even, when we are designing our lives for the purpose of comforts don't come just like that. If you're building a project, the project needs a lot of discomfort in itself. If you are managing a team of certain number of people, every day brings a lot of challenges. So you're kind of living 100 people's lives in a way. So each is bringing a trouble one day or the other. And so you need to finish certain projects, certain things. In each type of situation, troubles 100% cannot be avoided. But they do not mean that creating a comfortable living or comfortable life is something one should avoid. That's fine. There's no harm with that. But trying to avoid discomfort is not something one should feel. It's not even possible, to be honest with you.
Yeah. So I guess kind of what you are saying, especially at the end, that it not being possible as much, it's not that you have to deliberately create some kind of discomfort, but there will be discomforts. I guess from my understanding, correct me if you're wrong, you're saying that we need to create a mentality to have the resilience to tackle those discomforts, to ensure that, we build the gratitude and our character as a result through it. And that makes sense because I think we spoke about this, I believe it was in the smartphone and social media podcast, where we were talking about how a lot of the time in my generation, it is very easy to avoid these struggles and these discomforts because of the fact that we have a screen that can distract us, or we have entertainment that can quickly take us away from that struggle and boredom. And similarly, us kind of growing up with that screen and growing up with that lack of struggle and boredom, and essentially maybe a reduced resilience as well. The younger generation, when I think about my younger sisters, obviously as well, they've grown up not just with those screens in front of them, but in terms of in this topic of neighborhoods, they've grown up with a lot of privacy, but a lack of community as well. So, in the previous question towards the beginning, we were talking about how we've, lost this sense of community as a result of privacy or through the convenience of privacy. More kind of particularly, Baba, what do you think that impact is having on children that are growing up in these societies? Because is it not affecting their friendships and their social activity, their social environment?
Okay, Shayan, now when we are comparing this private life with for example, our times, there is something to compare with. And in our times, of course, we learned the meaning of life through belonging and connection. So they were part of the history of human life. So from very earlier on, when humans started settling into communities till our age. But since the social media has come and kids who have grown up in this new time, their whole relationship with life has changed. The only life they know is this private life. So having their own time and just creating time or with the friends or whoever every 2 weeks or maybe every few months, and then meeting in a particular place and for a particular hours or whatever time they've been set. So before, life used to be quite casual. So people would just casually come in and meet each other and all that. So these effects are still to be researched upon and kind of known. So I think they're completely unknown, that how the generation which has grown up in such private kind of settings or individualistic kind of, well, there is of course some research. People have lived individualistic lives in even 1930s and 1960s. There were families who lived very individualistic lives even in the past. Of course, the whole society wasn't just living a similar type of life. People had different styles of life even in the past. But as a society as a whole, or a major part of society, wasn't this individualistic as it is today. So the effects of it, I think, still are quite unknown, but may not be as unpleasant because, as you mentioned, your own sisters, I see that they are quite fulfilled with their lives. They're happy, they laugh a lot, even more than the ones who otherwise had kind of quite more interactional time. So from that point of view, I feel that there don't seem to be anything missing in them so far, as I can see. And with their other peer group, I normally try to notice that how things are changing. My own personal observations, things haven't changed that much, but whether they're at surface level, how deep they are in terms of relationships and in terms of taking care of themselves and the situations and the hardships come in life, how well they will be able to deal with it, that's too early to know.
But of course, as you said, there isn't as much of a comparison then regarding the younger generation, because this is something they've been born into regarding that kind of lack of communal living. But one thing then I wonder regarding this comparison, you've of course lived through both of these environments, which I think makes it really interesting to the topic we're discussing today, that you've lived through communal culture and now you've come into an individualistic culture. So it makes me wonder then, this kind of environment that you've now moved into, relatively, I guess, because there's more seclusion, one could argue it's a more peaceful environment. So do you feel like this peaceful environment that a lot of us strive for, is it something that improves us? Or does that inner peace kind of have to come from somewhere else? Are we kind of looking in the wrong places?
Well, Shayan, as I mentioned earlier, the success, the comforts of success, they bring a lot of joy. They make you feel that you have achieved something in life. And the comforts which come with it do provide that peace of mind. Okay, you're living in a comfortable place, you have less noise, you have less distraction, less kind of friction. Anything which are related to financial needs and they get fulfilled because of the finances you have, or you're living in a reasonable neighborhood, so then that helps. But in terms of your, inner self, that's a totally different world. That has got nothing to do with your financial growth. I always have said it. A laborer can be as content as a billionaire may not be. And a billionaire can be as content as a laborer cannot be. Because contentness and peace, inner peace, is an inner life. And the financial comfort, bigger houses and fluent neighborhoods, they only fulfill the needs of your external life. Your body, your physical self, even to some degree your peace of mind from external noise. But when it comes to inner peace, that is you, whether how much acceptance you have given to yourself, how much meaningful life the current one, you are living, whether the meaning in life has changed over time because of this move or they stayed the same. If your meaning of life hasn't changed and they're still as meaningful as they were before, then nothing has changed. So you're as comfortable or less comfortable as before.
So, but what practically then, what would a peaceful life, I guess, look like inside and not just kind of outside through these extravagant neighborhoods and environments that we kind of yearn for a lot?
Chasing neighborhoods or success, financial success or success of status or success of networks is just an external success. People chase, some do, some don't. And there is nothing wrong with it. Sometimes when it's inner peace and success gets kind of, people see that those two things as two conflicting things, but they're not. Because you can chase everything, but at the same time, take care of your inner peace. And just understand the inner peace doesn't come with financial success or status or popularity or fame. Inner peace comes with a meaningful life, with a purposeful life. And meaningful life is related to belonging, connection, taking responsibility, whether it's difficult time or good time, making sure you adhere to your responsibilities to all the connections which are related to your belonging self. So just I will give you an example. When I was growing up, there was a neighborhood, Jalalabad, it was called, in Muzaffarabad, and all the people, 20, 30 houses around us, we were kind of connected, if not related, but lived as related to each other. In everybody's happiness, or somebody passed, somebody's birthday, somebody's other situation, somebody died. So we would kind of participate as into each other's life. So I belonged to all those people. My difficulty mattered to them, my happiness mattered to them. So now my responsibility becomes to stay connected to those people and finding their difficulty and their problems and take pain of them and kind of stay connected to them and try to help or try to be seen in their good and bad time. And don't kind of shut away or go out and do my own thing, even if sometimes you find difficult to kind of take your time out and be part of that broader community. So going through that difficulty of choices and making sure that you take responsibility rather than shedding it away because you are not liking it is what creates meaning. The formula is whoever you feel belong to, the place, religion, and the people. Different people would feel belonging to different set of things. So whoever you feel belong to, you make sure you stay connected and fulfill your responsibility, whether it comes good or bad time, whether you find it difficult or you find it joy. So that creates meaning, because there will be times you will have to maybe stay with somebody in the hospital for the night and the next morning you have to go to work. So making sure that you go through those difficulties, even if you have to fulfill your obligation of responsibility. And that brings meanings. Whereas once you become individualistic and you just kind of live your own life and you don't so that becomes a bit shallower. And of course the wealth and stuff, and you have the house and everything, that has got nothing to do with the inner peace. Inner peace comes from the meaning. And neither it kind of is counterproductive to it either. So success doesn't mean that you have less meaning in life, and neither it means that your life has become meaningful now.
So it's kind of basically finding that meaning inside within yourself.
And you can do the same if you're poorer or less successful, more successful. So it doesn't relate to your success. It's a constant process of keeping your responsibilities and fulfilling them.
And the thing is, what I really like about that advice, especially, is that the example you gave there at the end, where you can do it in whatever condition you're in, which I think is what makes it the most practical, I guess, as well. Because often we look for a lot better external conditions in order to achieve this success and this kind of internal peace. So, Baba, now what I want to do is, I want to move a bit more personally. And the best way to do that is obviously through our segment that we like to call the Lessons of Life segment. So it's just one or two answers of kind of getting an understanding of what you've picked up along the way. So my first question to you, Baba, is that from your own experience, having gained a successful and comfortable life, at what point did you realize that this isn't the key to happiness? And what kind of made you realize that change?
You know, from very early on, when I was younger, because I was 23 years old, my father had stroke and I had younger siblings, 5 brothers and sisters. So I already knew from very young age the whole fulfilling part would never came to me through my successes. From very young age, I started, for example, investment banking, hedge fund I used to work for. I started making good money from very young age. But since then, I felt that the fulfillment always came from, say, my dad is happy with me, my sister got good marks, somebody got potential for better career or something, or relationships I had with my family, and then later on, marriage and children and how well they did. For me, happiness has never been through success. So it wasn't that, okay, there was a certain point in time where I felt that what I was chasing wasn't happiness. It wasn't, because I wasn't never chased money or success for the purpose of comfort, because I think the way our life was designed and we grew up, whether it was family or kind of ethos of the whole neighborhood, was this type that it's your character, the type of person you are. So that brings the contentment and happiness than just the wealth. What I felt though is that since times changed, the technology came in, social media came in, between 2008 and 2012, society changed in a big way. Considering I was reasonably successful from a younger age, and then later on kind of consistently grew over time financially and had successes, so I would intervene into people's life. If there's a trouble, if there's a problem, I would kind of help, whether financially, whether advice, and people would of course hear the advice and be thankful to it. But what I noticed, that things started changing by then, that people wouldn't like intrusion, people wouldn't like somebody even helping or trying to comfort them in any way. So people started feeling that if somebody tries to comfort you, it might kind of exposes their vulnerabilities post 2012. So that changed, not that how to find happiness, but how to find meaning in this new way of life. Whereas before, meaning was that, okay, I have my parents, my brothers, sisters, my children, my family, and looking after them was bringing all that meaning. But over time, the external families, even to that point, that even brothers and sisters wouldn't like as much intrusion into their lives either. And of course, cousins, and so as the rest of the family or surround people I kind of grew up with. So finding meaning in that new, where I have a nucleus family, and now was kind of more focused on you lot education and trying to make sure that your future gets secured. And at the same time, kind of, I remember that trying to spread the word, whatever I knew. For example, looking after your children is very important, because they don't know what's best for them until the age of 16. And so just making sure people understood, or somebody's not getting along as a couple, trying to kind of advise in a kind of not very direct way, but indirect way, so that wherever I found anything which is not right, so I will try to help, but wasn't as direct or as kind of fulfilling the experience of interaction as pre-2012. So I think, so if anything changed, it's just the way life has changed. And I, who is used to the olden times, trying to make sense of this new way of life and how to create. Of course, wealth I was able to create, that's entirely up to you. But when it comes to meaning and connection and sticking to your belongings, then that is something not just only dependent on you, but all the people around you.
So, Baba, obviously, you've adapted to this change then. And a lot of that change you've adapted to has been through, I guess, experiences and kind of working it out along the way. But what is one thing that you would kind of say, if you had the opportunity to speak to your 20-year-old self? What is one thing that you would say to that individual about how to kind of make life more fulfilling and meaningful and create this inner peace, essentially, in a world where people are kind of chasing those neighborhoods and external factors and believing that that's what's going to provide peace to them?
I would still re-emphasize, because you keep referring to this as that maybe the external neighborhoods would hinder your peace. They will never hinder your peace. They may add to some comfort. So that one thing I want to very clearly state, that chasing success doesn't harm anything at all. But relating your inner peace to external success is problematic. Inner peace only comes through meaningful living and having purpose in life. And that purpose is to whatever you belong to. I have already mentioned those things. Whichever neighborhood, the place, the city, the country you feel belonging to, whatever religion or sect or belief system, spirituality you feel belonging to, that demands some certain sacrifices in life. So as long as you're willing to sacrifice your time, effort, and stay connected and fulfill those responsibilities in your life, then the meaning stays. Then whichever path you take, whether you become successful or you go far in life or you move places or you do anything, as long as your these belonging, connection, and purpose stays, you don't lose meaning and comfort in life, the inner comfort. And financial, of course, comfort is a totally different thing. It has nothing to do, neither positive nor bad, to your inner comfort. Maybe slightly positive, still slightly positive, because you feel achieved, and achievement brings a sense of comfort in its own way.
And I appreciate that clarification. Just the one thing, but then after kind of implementing these things and one's now ensured that they're not attaching to these external environments, but at the same time, obviously, they are providing the benefits that they provide. What would an actual good neighborhood, a good life, kind of a genuinely good life that has that inner peace, what would it actually look like in practical terms?
Well, a genuinely good neighborhood and a good life will be the people where people are connected to each other, wherever you, so your sense of belonging to the place actually comes from the place. The people who live in that place have stake in you and you have stake in them. They take part in your life and you take part in theirs life. So neighborhood where people look out for each other, they comfort each other, they get involved in each other's difficult and good times. So that would be a good neighborhood to have. And at the same time, you have that, because new life, of course, demands certain privacy and you don't intrude into each other's life either. So a neighborhood which understand the boundaries and at the same time have the empathy and kind of compassion for each other as well. The trouble is that there are few things which are very important to have that type of neighborhood. You know, in olden times, people would be living in one place for generations. So somebody would know your granddad, somebody would know your dad, somebody would know your uncles and your cousins. So that's how your connections would build. And now with urbanization, and especially with these upper class neighborhoods, people move up the ladder from smaller neighborhoods to coming up to these bigger neighborhoods. And they kind of lose those old connections because of it, which are generational either, and plus people have moved to cities from villages or small towns. So those kind of delinking from your generational links also creates that lack of connection and lack of belonging in a particular place. So it's quite difficult to find such neighborhoods in today's time. But of course, you can make an effort, and wherever you are, whichever street you live in, so of course you can go around and kind of keep an eye and speak to people and find out if they need you. So you can stay connected still you can stay connected. But because of, say, migration and other things, it is not as easy as, because when people know you from generations or they know your parents, the connection become much more, it's already stronger. You don't have to make that much extra effort. But when it is only the first time you're knocking somebody's door, it takes time to kind of develop that.
Now, Baba, one kind of penultimate question I do want to ask is, and it's more so to kind of get your insight and of how my generation will now look in the future and what our meaning of community will be. And what I mean by that is, growing up now, I've noticed increasingly, and it's something we've spoken about before, that there have been a lack of third spaces. I think we spoke about this in a previous episode. But in order to tackle that now through social media, people my age, they're creating these third spaces. You see chess clubs are starting to become even more rampant than before. You're seeing like pubs are now basically not really being pubs anymore, but more like youthful third spaces where they'll have the football on, but also maybe like an event to keep the young people entertained. There is this desire to have a neighborhood, to have a community, because people feel like that social change helps bring peace as well. Do you think that this desire that my generation has, and who knows, the generation below us might have that same desire eventually as well, do you think that this will actually cause us to maybe change what a good neighborhood means and change that meaning of community? Or do you think that we'll kind of eventually go back in this cycle and end up settling the same way people before us used to settle?
Okay, for example, we have these kind of social clubs, or even the neighborhood we just been, so they had a local tennis club, squash club, and people have local pubs in England, for example, where local community would come in. Of course, there are these social places, people come and they interact with each other, and schools have mums groups, so each kid is going in a... But I noticed strangely though, because when you guys were in primary school and there would be mums clubs for good 15, 16 kids, mums would be meeting each other every 2 weeks or every 4 weeks. But those social clubs don't last as those generational neighborhoods which we saw in our time, because those groups would kind of stick to each other like thick and thin in their difficult times. But what I realize now is that, okay, when as long as you have kids in your certain age, so those groups would form and then they would stay for a time being, but over time they will kind of wither away. The same goes for other situations, whether it's club membership or those social groups or certain particular kind of sports you're saying. So you would of course meet people, have a drink or coffee or something else in a club. But that's all it is. I had my tennis partner, for example, Sal. So we would spend good amount of time, as much actually, as one of my best friends in my younger age. But it won't kind of translate into having that deep empathy for his personal life or him for my personal life. Whereas it used to be in a different way, very close connection. So whether that kind of close connection is possible in today's age, to be honest with you, I don't think so. I don't think in today's time, especially because you are just a transitional generation, and generations coming after you, they are purely this technology generation, and they are happy with that. They don't want to have any other type of life. It seems like it, that's what they want, that okay, they can stay connected through technology and sometime meet up, and they don't want to get intruded much either and stay. I think I see that type of shift in the future. And people would still have some, of course, we are human, we still need people. People would still have maybe a small group of people, a few friends, 1, 2, 4, whatever, which they might kind of still stay very close to. But having that broader sense of community seems to be diminishing. I don't see it's coming back in my view.
After all of this then, Baba, from that kind of loss of community to what a genuinely good life looks like, to whether or not these new age third spaces might be a replacement, what is one piece of advice that you would give my generation growing up in this age about living a life that is comfortable and full?
Well, I personally think that understanding yourself and accepting yourself through knowledge, through reading, through experiences which are positive experiences which can give you something to learn, to understand life, and then doing whatever you set out to do, whatever kind of ambitions you have, fulfilling them, chasing whatever dreams you have, or living as much luxury life as you can, would be a wonderful thing to have. But at the same time, having purpose, having meaning in life, fulfilling those responsibilities you have, would bring that peace of mind, that contentment, that meaning, which kind of fill that inner space, which people sometimes feel empty. So I think that's the way to go.
Thanks so much for that, Baba. So here's what we're left with. Comfort can make life easier, but it can't make it meaningful. A beautiful home won't fix a disconnected heart. The thing that matters most, in terms of belonging, purpose, connection, they often require effort, not ease. The question isn't whether we can build nicer lives, it's whether we can build lives worth living inside of them. Thank you so much for listening.